Alright, hello, citizens of the Nigerverse. It is Niger here once again. So, right off the bat, sorry for going AWOL on you guys for this past week. I can't lie, it's been a bit of an interesting week, and not always in a good way. I know I'm officially now behind on my reviews of both NXT Stand and Deliver and WrestleMania 41, and there's a lot to talk about there. But those will be coming hopefully this week. Not exactly sure what day just yet, but definitely stay tuned for those, and please bear with me. Some pretty big stuff is coming up, at least in kind of my personal life, which will carry over to the channel in a good way. And I am planning on experimenting with some different types of content. As for Awful Month, I know I said it was going to be in May, but I'm thinking about pushing it back to June. I think I'm going to push it back just about a month. May, we're going to do some. We're gonna try some cool stuff there, or in terms of reviews. We're more than likely going to do the next in the Matrix trilogy, at least, or the Matrix quadrilogy, because we're also going to look at Matrix 4 that came out a couple years later, a couple years ago, I should say, because of course that ties into the series. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We're going to be doing some other types of content, and it's not going to be just reviews. I want to do some more Reddit content. We're going to experiment with even a new, different type of content. So some big stuff happening, and some big leaps that I want to take when it comes to the channel, the direction of the channel. Admittedly, part of me has been kind of figuring out what I want to do in terms of next steps for the channel. I'm not leaving, I promise, but kind of trying to figure out ways I want to go about continuing on the channel. So, without further ado, let's get into what we're talking about today. Hey, like I said, reviews are not quite there yet, especially because I have to still watch Stand and Deliver. I missed it live. I did watch WrestleMania 41 live. I'm gonna watch Stand and Deliver, gonna review Stand and Deliver, then we're gonna review WrestleMania 41. That is coming up this week. But Without further ado, let's get into the subject of today's discussion video. So, right off the bat, sometimes in life things don't go according to plan, and never is this more prevalent. And I know, and admittedly, I say that kind of as exaggeration, but it seems very apt that it happens all the time in the world of pro wrestling, because things are ever changing. Things always have to get shifted around, have to get moved around for a variety of reasons, whether it be injuries, someone leaving a certain company, someone going to another company, or some other factors. Sometimes matches that were supposed to happen, that were planned out to happen, end up not happening. In fact, some of them end up not happening ever, I should say. But some end up not happening for a little while. They end up getting pushed back. So today I want to go through 10 matches that were supposed to happen but ended up not happening for a number of reasons. And we have the 10 here. Admittedly, this is going to be a part 2. There might be a part 2 to this, because 10 is not going to cut it. And a lot of the matches I was running into, when it comes to matches that didn't happen, some I knew off the top of my head, others I had to look into. A lot of them came from WWE, but the thing is, I didn't just want to do a bunch of WWE slash WF matches. I wanted to kind of switch things up a bit, but we do have some WWE matches on here, but I got some matches from other companies as well. But if you guys do want to see a part 2, please feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I would honestly love to do a part 2, because this I think is a fascinating topic, a topic of we talk about a lot about the what ifs in wrestling, or the what could have beens in wrestling. I think this is definitely something of interest here when it comes to that. But without further ado, we got our matches here, so let's go through them. The first one is at Survivor Series 2017, Brock Lesnar versus Jinder Mahal. Now, nowadays WWE does the whole War Games aspect at Survivor Series. He's in. For the most part, they've kind of done away with the whole brand warfare thing to the chagrin of some, but to the excitement of many. Because a lot of people weren't really the biggest fans of the whole brand warfare aspect. At least he's in terms of it not really mattering or being inconsequential. But for a while, they were doing the whole brand versus brand aspect of it. They kind of did it when the brand split first happened, and when the brand split happened again in 2016, they kind of went back to that format of doing kind of brand warfare and everything at Survivor Series. Now, I had mentioned it I did a discussion video on it, I believe last year on the channel, and I stated that if you can make it interesting, I don't really see a problem with brand warfare, but I know a lot of people felt like it wasn't really interesting or didn't really matter, so eventually they did away with it. But part of the brand warfare was doing champions versus champions. And it's usually the world champions would face each other, the tag team champions would face each other, and the mid-card champions, that being the Intercontinental and United States champions, would end up facing each other as well. And that was the case here, as Brock Lesnar was originally set to take on Jinder Mahal, or at least that's what it was leading to. So Brock Lesnar was the Universal Champion on Raw, the absentee Universal Champion as it was at the time on Raw, and Jinder Mahal was in the middle of his WWE Championship reign, in which it wasn't being received well. Sadly, was not good at all. But it seemed like there was going to be a collision course between the two at Survivor Series because of the whole champion versus champion aspect, which admittedly a part of me would have kind of liked to see, because it probably would have been funny. But why this didn't happen is because they ended up taking the title off of Jinder Mahal and propping it on and putting it on AJ Styles, I should say. So they took the title from Jinder Mahal, and AJ Styles won it from him. I believe he won it from him on SmackDown, if I'm not mistaken, and on a SmackDown in 2017. And let me look that up just to be sure. But nevertheless, AJ Styles was now the WWE champion, and so he then took the WWE Championship instead of Jinder Mahal. He then took the WWE Championship into Survivor Series to battle against Brock Lesnar in probably one of the best Survivor Series matches possibly ever, or one of a lot of people's favorite Survivor Series matches. I know I reviewed it last year on the channel. It was fantastic. If you haven't already, go check out that review and check out that match, because I definitely think it is worth a watch, because it is very, very fantastic. Very much a Dave versus Goliath kind of battle, one that we had seen with AJ Styles. We saw with this match, AJ versus Brock. We would see the next year here, which we'll get to, kind of a spoiler, and the match that we would have seen, with Brock Lesnar and Ricochet, if Ricochet was actually being booked well. So on November 7th, episode of SmackDown, AJ Styles took the WWE Championship from Jinder Mahal, and it's crazy that Jinder just lost it on an episode of SmackDown, and I forgot they were still calling it SmackDown Live even then. I don't even think the SmackDown Live, I don't think the live was dropped from SmackDown until, I believe, like 2020 or so. But so originally it was supposed to be Brock versus Jinder, but I'm glad they went with Brock versus AJ instead. But AJ Styles may have been on one side of it, but then he would be on the other, because the next match up is Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles at Survivor Series 2018. And yes, they were doing a champion versus champion again, and AJ Styles had a year-long championship reign, and over a year-long championship reign, and so it seemed like he would carry it into the next year's event as well. But this time, AJ Styles also lost the WWE Championship on SmackDown, this time to Daniel Bryan. This is when Daniel Bryan had come back. He had turned heel. He became the new Daniel Bryan, and we weren't quite at the eco-friendly WWE Championship just yet, but because of that, Daniel Bryan took the championship from AJ Styles, and so it then ended up being Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan at Survivor Series. Now, would I have liked to seen AJ versus Brock 2 at the time? I'm sure, because it definitely would have been fun as well. But Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar also put on a really solid match as well. So in this case, I'm glad they decided not to do the repetition. But crazy how AJ Styles has been on both sides. Next up is not another match in that regard. Imagine if they kept doing that year after year. Then Daniel Bryan loses someone, and then they face someone else. But next up, we have TNA Sacrifice 2008, Scott Steiner versus Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe. Yeah, oh yes, this is the match that begat the infamous, always hilarious Steiner math promo that Braun Breaker himself even referenced a couple times now on TV. He more recently going into the Fatal 4-Way match at WrestleMania. But Steiner cut the Steiner Math promo saying that Samoa Joe has no chance of beating him, and Kurt Angle knows he can't beat him, and so he's not even going to try. So Scott Steiner pretty much broke down the math as to why he was going to win at Sacrifice. Probably one of my favorite promos, probably one of a lot of people's favorite promos, probably one of the funniest promos. It's a promo that I can't even begin to try to go through because I would not be able to do it justice. If you haven't seen this promo, look it up on YouTube. It's on YouTube in its entirety. People have made edits about it and everything. So definitely check out that promo. Of all the promos to check out, you can have your hard times. You can have the twinkle in the eye. Hey, Steiner Math is definitely one that you gotta check out if you haven't already, which I'm sure the majority of you have. But it was supposed to lead to a triple threat between these three at TNA Sacrifice 2008. But unfortunately, Kurt Angle got injured, so he ended up being replaced by Frankie Kazarian, and Samoa Joe wound up winning the match. I reviewed this match a while ago, a couple years ago as well, so go check that out if you haven't already. But also, that's probably why Scott Steiner lost, because now that Kurt Angle is no longer in the mix, now his math was off, so it makes sense. But next up is we're heading back to WWE for this one, that being WWE No Mercy 2017, Finn Balor versus Bray Wyatt. Now, Finn Balor and Bray Wyatt had been feuding for a while in 2017, and their feud got pretty weird. And this was right after Finn Balor had came back. He showed up on the main roster 2016, won the Universal Championship at SummerSlam, becoming the first Universal Champion, then suffered his shoulder injury. During his match with Seth Rollins, and during that match pretty much broke his shoulder, all for the ugly Universal Championship belt. But by this point, Finn Balor was back, and now it was in this feud with Bray Wyatt, and they had kind of gone back and forth. Finn Balor had gotten, I think, every win over Bray. I don't think Bray got a single win over Finn during this feud. Finn Balor had already unleashed the Demon King to this point, but Bray had been coming back for more. To me, like, the Demon King, I feel like should be a feud ender, like that gimmick, that persona, which we haven't seen since WrestleMania 39, and which honestly, that's probably for another video, but I kind of get why, because it feels like Finn Balor's on a different trajectory with the whole Judgment Day and everything, but I do kind of miss the Demon King at times. But Finn Balor was set to battle Bray Wyatt yet again at No Mercy 2017, and Finn Balor was teasing bringing back the Demon King. Even had a orange pumpkin version, because this was around October time, and Bray Wyatt was going to be unleashing Sister Abigail, aka him in a veil with a filter on. But of course, Bray Wyatt ended up getting sick. It was viral meningitis, I believe, that was going around at that time, which shook up a lot of matches at TLC 2017, including a match that didn't quite make the card, but it was supposed to be the Shield versus pretty much like 5 other people, that being like Kane, Braun Strowman, The Bar, and The Miz. But Roman had to be swapped out with Kurt Angle for that match. But for this one, Finn Balor instead faced AJ Styles. Well, it's brought the Demon King anyway, because I guess by that point, you already teased it. You got to deliver. But brought back the Demon King anyway, and had a phenomenal, no pun intended, match with AJ Styles at TLC 2017. Definitely a match, if you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out. And thankfully, like, one of the best matches that they've had, essentially on accident, because Bray Wyatt obviously couldn't be at the event, but it kind of put an end to the feud. You know what I'm saying? I don't think they really feuded anymore after that. I think Finn kind of transitioned into a different feud from that point. I could be wrong about that. Let me know if I am, but I'm pretty sure at that point, people probably didn't want to see Finn versus Bray again. No disrespect to either man, but but a part of me also wonders, what would that look like? Like, had Bray Wyatt been healthy and able to compete in the match, what would they have done? Like, what kind of spooky cinematography wizardry would they have gotten up to in the match? Like, it would have been interesting. There's a chance it could have been something. It's a very slim chance, but there's a very real chance it could have been something. But obviously, we'll never know. But next up, we have and this is our last WWE one for this list, that being WrestleMania 27, Undertaker versus Sting. Now, I had actually talked about this some time ago when I did a discussion on the Greatest Dream Match to Never Happen, and this pretty much was the Greatest Dream Match to Never Happen, even though it technically kind of happened, and because Sting and Mean Mark Calloway faced off back when Mark Calloway, before he became The Undertaker, was in WCW, but a lot of people for years had wanted Sting versus The Undertaker. That being the Crow Sting, the same Sting that took on the NWO, brought to the NWO, versus The Undertaker, the Phenom, the Dead Man. Both men who had built up their legacies a lot up to that point. And it seemed like we were finally getting it. It has in 2011, and fresh off when Undertaker retired Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels stayed retired. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But fresh off of that, we were awaiting who would be the next WrestleMania opponent for The Undertaker. This is around the time Undertaker started transitioning from being like a regular performer. He had matches in 2010. He had like kind of the mini feud with Kane and everything. He was World Heavyweight Champion, kind of transitioning into just showing up for WrestleMania. But at that time, these vignettes started to play, and because I went over it in the discussion, I'll kind of give the Cliff Notes version. Vignettes began to play a kind of leading towards WrestleMania, and apparently the legend goes that these were for Sting, because at this point Sting was between contracts, just wrap things up with TNA, and so apparently these were for him to come into WWE and finally get that Sting versus Undertaker match at WrestleMania 27. But ultimately Sting re-signed with TNA, and stayed there for a little while on afterwards, including the match at Victory Road 2011 with him and Jeff Hardy. Yay. But instead, Undertaker took over the vignettes, and then the match transitioned into Undertaker versus Triple H, No Holds Barred, WrestleMania 27. Now, considering that match was fantastic, one of the only good matches, save for like one or two others, one of the only actually good matches at WrestleMania 27, and I guess it worked out for the best, but it does make you wonder what would have happened if Undertaker versus Sting had indeed happened in 2011, and as reportedly planned. Now, Sting would wind up coming to WWE in 2014, he showed up at Survivor Series 2014, helped Team Cena beat Team Authority. He would then have a WrestleMania match against Triple H at WrestleMania 31. But it does make you wonder what would have happened if he had indeed showed up 3 years earlier for the match with The Undertaker. We will perhaps never know. There's a chance the hype of the dream match wouldn't have lived up to the actual match. That's always a possibility, but I do think it could. But I do think it would have made for a very interesting match. But that's kind of the. Kind of one of the biggest dream matches, one of the biggest unanswered questions, kind of coming true. But obviously, we'll now never know. Both men are retired and everything, so so that's kind of on. So that's kind of going into the questions that will never really be answered kind of category. But next up, this one, admittedly, this one and the last match we have on this list are kind of speculative. But we were supposed to, apparently, according to Austin Aries, we were supposed to get a rematch between him and Johnny Impact, aka Johnny Elite, aka John Morrison, however you know him. So, in 2017, Austin Aries, I believe at Slammiversary is when they faced off. Johnny Impact, aka John Morrison, and won the TNA World Championship. Oh, Bound for Glory. Hey, my apologies. But at Bound for Glory 2017, Johnny Impact won the TNA World Championship from Austin Aries. These two had kind of had a bitter feud on and off camera at this point. Apparently had a lot of problems with each other. And we're kind of blurring the lines between kayfabe and reality, to the point where it led into this match. And at the end, when Johnny Impact won the TNA won the Impact World Championship, it wasn't TNA again just yet, but it was Impact at the time. When Johnny Impact won the Impact World Championship from Austin Aries then got up, walked out, and pretty much no-sold the finish. It's flipped off the fans and walked out. And a lot of people were very upset at this. Johnny Impact especially was upset. You can see him very much kind of what the hell, on camera as it's happening. A lot of people were very upset at Austin Aries' seemingly unprofessional behavior when it comes to that. And the reason I say seemingly is because, at least according to Austin Aries, is there was supposed to be a rematch. It was supposed to be planned, and I guess it was supposed to lead to Austin Aries coming back and them eventually doing a rematch for the title. But Austin Aries then ended up leaving Impact. I believe he let his contract expire, and didn't resign. Or was terminated from his contract. I forget exactly, but pretty much the bottom line is he ended up leaving Impact, so that never really materialized. And honestly, them doing a rematch based off of that, and whether you believe Austin Aries' story there or not is up to you, but because of course Austin Aries at this point kind of had a bit of a reputation. Austin Aries, he's for a lot of people, was probably one of the textbook examples of being your own worst enemy, and I think this is probably examples A through Z of that. But at the same time, I do wonder how they would have gone about explaining this and that leading into a feud between the two, if that was the plan. And I do wonder how they would have went about that. But apparently that was the plan, and it never really materialized. But next up, we have WCW Super Brawl 1998, Rick Martel versus Perry Saturn. Yes, that's right. Rick the Model Martel was in WCW in 1998 at the time. He had come back some time before that, had kind of a career renaissance of sorts in WCW, and he was in the U.S. Championship tournament, and the first match before this was Rick Martel versus Booker T. And apparently Rick Martel was supposed to win that match and then face off against Perry Saturn immediately afterward. So he'll pull double duty, or I'm not sure if it was later on in the night and they just pushed it up to this one, but Rick Martel unfortunately suffered a very serious injury, so they essentially had to call an audible, and Booker T ended up winning the match and then facing Perry Saturn immediately afterwards for the U.S. Championship. And props to Booker T and Perry Saturn for essentially calling the match on the fly, and it actually being a very fantastic match. A lot of people talk about how great this match was, even though it was last minute. But Rick Martel, this wouldn't quite be the official end, and he would come back, but then get injured again, and from there he retired. But it does make me wonder what it would have looked like had Rick Martel not gotten injured, and had he then gone on to have the match with Perry Saturn, and apparently, if I'm not mistaken, he was supposed to win the match as well. So that would have been even easier for Rick Martel to actually get the win over Perry Saturn there. But and obviously, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to Rick Martel, but also additional props to Booker T and Perry Saturn for essentially having to call things on the fly, and having Ish hit the fan, and then having to pick things up and go from there. It's something that's been done before and since, but to be able to do that when things don't go according to plan, and so you gotta rewrite it, and to make it look good, definitely all the props. Sometimes sometimes you gotta have that plan B in place, and I'm glad they were able to go through with the plan B and make it look solid. But next up, we have PMG Clash of Legends. I forgot to put the year. PMG Clash of Legends 2007, and Hulk Hogan versus Jerry the King Lawler. So this was an independent show, I believe partially run by Hulk Hogan, or at least Hulk Hogan was a very featured name. This is before the drop in Reputation. Most, not all of these were before the drop in Reputation, including for Brock, of course, but also for Hogan here. This was obviously well before, so Hogan was supposed to face Jerry Lawler at this event, but this match didn't materialize because Jerry Lawler was still contracted by WWE, and WWE decided to not allow Jerry Lawler to work this show. So he had to be replaced by not Big Show anymore, because he had been released the year before, but Paul the Great White, who came up with that name because he said that Big Show, and this is his words, Big Show was his slave name, and now he was going by Paul the Great White. It's even more awkward when you consider that by February, by No Way Out, specifically 2008, Big Show would be back in WWE. So that was a brief bop around chapter, but so Jerry Lawler had to be replaced from that, and Big Show was put in his place. Paul White, I should say. But next, second to last match on the list here, we have AEW World's End 2023, Swerve Strickland versus Keith Lee. That's the first ever World's End 2023. Swerve was supposed to battle Keith Lee. This was supposed to be the blow off to their kind of feud, question mark, that they had only because it had been on the back burner for a little bit because Keith Lee was out. They were a tag team. Swerve and Keith Lee were a tag team. Swerve and Our Glory. They won the tag team championships. Eventually, Swerve turned on Keith Lee. He started up the Mogul affiliates, and then that morphed into the Mogul Emissary when he joined up with Prince Nana and everything. But then Keith Lee had come back. He was aligned with Dustin Rhodes at the time, so it was going to be this, I guess, blow-off match at World's End 2023. but Keith Lee was pulled. He was cleared. He was not. I should say he was not cleared to compete. So instead, Swerve ended up facing Dustin Rhodes, and Keith Lee unfortunately has not been on AEW TV in a wrestling capacity since he's still been out. Thankfully he still posts on social media, so at least that lets me know that he's still active in that regard. But it is unfortunate. I do hope Keith Lee is okay and he's doing well, recovering well. But yeah. So to this date, at the time of this recording, that being on April 27th of 2025, this match still has not happened, and I feel like Swerve has kind of moved on from this. So please don't take this the wrong way. It'd kind of be pointless for this to happen now because Swerve has kind of moved on heavily from this feud. In this time, he has turned face, won the world championship, been world champion, and kind of in the feud with the Death Riders now. So I guess it wouldn't really make the most sense to have this match. So this will probably forever be a mystery as to how this would have turned out. But it was supposed to go down at World's End 2023, but unfortunately it didn't quite happen. But the last one, this is also an AEW match, and technically this is 2-1, and you're gonna hear why in just a second. We have the CM Punk versus MJF rematch. So CM Punk and MJF had quite the feud between each other. One of like CM Punk's early feuds when he got into AEW. So it led to their dog collar match at Revolution 2022. Match I actually have not seen yet because that was before I started watching AEW. There's something in my hair. I think I got it. But that was before I started watching AEW, let alone watching the AEW pay-per-views. So unfortunately, I missed out on the feud and the match. I definitely do want to go back and watch the match. It's on. I actually have a list of matches to check out at some point on the channel. It's kind of just a list that I kind of refer to and pull from in order to review matches, and that match is very much on there because it is a match I definitely want to check out. A lot of people feel like it's one of CM Punk's greatest works in AEW. A lot of people feel like it's one of MJF's greatest works in AEW. But that match happened, and it seemed as though on two occasions we were going to revisit that match. And both of them happened to coincide with the two incidents that led to CM Punk being fired from AEW, if you can believe it. So I guess the match really wasn't meant to happen. But the first was at All Out 2022. MJF was gone, taken out by after his loss to Wardlow at Double or Nothing 2022, who then afterwards did the work shoot promo, pretty much going off on AEW and everything, and then he was off TV for the time being, and sorry, I adjusted my water here, but he was taken out for the time being. Then he wound up coming back at All Out 2022 in the casino ladder match, and he came out under the Devil Mask, starting kind of that storyline and that association with MJF. And I had talked about that previously on the channel. If you haven't already, go check out that discussion. A lot of stuff to check out, a lot of stuff to plug, but an MJF had come back under the mask, won the chip later in the night after CM Punk had his match with Jon Moxley. Then, and MJF revealed himself to be under the devil mask. He took it off, put the scarf on. Crowd went nuts. Crazy that MJF got that big a pop when they were in Chicago, aka CM Punk's hometown. But so it seemed that we were setting up for CM Punk versus MJF there, and I imagine had CM Punk not gotten injured, whether in his match with Jon Moxley or the incident that happened afterwards, and B, if the cards are right, I imagine we probably would have gotten CM Punk versus MJF at Full Gear. Here, I imagine that was probably what they were going for, but obviously CM Punk was injured, hurt, and the brawl happened. I imagine he probably would have also been off TV, even if he wasn't injured. It probably wouldn't have been as long, but he was off TV because of the injury and the brawl, so it kind of put the kibosh on that. But MJF did end up winning the World Championship from Jon Moxley at Full Gear. And then the second time that it was seemingly teased, and really this one's a bit more speculative, but all the signs seem to point to this being the case, was when MJF was world champion. By this point, CM Punk had returned. He was on Collision, and he came back with the real world championship, aka the old AEW championship, spray painted with the X. Does that mean CM Punk had the real one, or does that mean MJF has a replica, or does CM Punk have the replica, or they just commission a whole new belt? I'm not entirely sure, but CM Punk had the belt, had spray painted. He was defending the real world championship, stating that he had not been beaten for the championship. Therefore, he was still the quote-unquote real world champion. And a storyline, a trope that they had done on multiple times throughout the years, the whole champion versus champion aspect, when two people hold the same belt at the same time, who's the real champion. Hell, one of those times involved CM Punk in 2011 when he won the W Championship from John Cena at Money in the Bank, and then was gone for some time, came back, they did the whole champion versus champion at SummerSlam. So it seemed like that was going to be the case, is that CM Punk was supposed to have a real world championship and eventually battle the then world champion MJF. But of course then Brawl Out was out, but Brawl In was in. So then the incident happened between CM Punk and Jack Perry, and that led to CM Punk being fired from AEW. So obviously in that regard, Punk versus MJF didn't happen there. But it does make you wonder what either one would have looked like, especially that second one, what they would have done with champion versus champion. Would we have gotten that instead of Jay White at Full Gear? Was that the stopgap for Full Gear? Or was that the stopgap for All Out? Maybe it does make you wonder where exactly the pivot happened. But obviously, Punk from there was terminated from AEW, then obviously went back to WWE, rest is history when it comes to that. But I do feel like a lot was, and that's been said about CM Punk leaving AEW. Sadly, a lot was left on the table when it comes to that, at what it would have looked like. And I think this is definitely one of the examples of it, because it is something I'm sure a lot of people were interested in. A lot of people like CM Punk vs. MJF Part 1. So what would Part 2 have looked like? Would it have lived up to Part 1? Probably not, but I still would have wondered what it would have looked like. And this one I would have been able to see, because this was around when I was watching AEW and watching the pay-per-views and everything. Around when I started, I should say. But obviously that didn't happen either. Or so a whole lot of cases of what if when it comes to that. But really, all these matches are cases of what if because these were supposed to happen, didn't, and but perhaps we'll never know, and perhaps we can speculate. And that's the fun part when it comes to speculation, is because we can kind of book for ourselves and kind of do some fancy booking and kind of try to figure out, well, what would have happened if these matches had indeed happened, and when they were, or even how they were supposed to. But that is going to do it for this discussion. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on those post notifications so you know every time I upload a video, so you never miss an upload. And let me know in the comments below which of these matches would you have liked to see happen, and how do you think things would have played out. And if I do a part 2, what type of matches do you want to see on that list? Because admittedly, there are quite a few. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace.